another guy who's slaving over a hot laptop, just broke some more news and is taking time for us. Just broke the Brandon Brown news, 2025 defensive lineman. Hank, great job. You're working like a $3 hooker over here. So, what can you tell us about Brandon Brown?
Yeah, so this just broke, in the last 10 minutes. He announced his commitment on Twitter, or X, I should say. 4-star defensive lineman from Florida. So I think first off, like, Texas is fully embracing the SEC with its 2025 class. You got KJ Lacey from Alabama, Emory Winston from Georgia. Now you got Brandon Brown from Melbourne, Florida. But I spent the last 5 minutes before we got on here watching his tape, and man, he is something. He's like a bowling ball, like a wrecking ball. Firing off the defensive line, just disrupting plays. He had a one-handed pick in one of his first highlights on his huddle page. So you can see right out of the gate, why Texas liked him. Someone was asking me, like, was this even on your radar? And it's like, well, I didn't know he was going to announce today, to be honest, but the kid was on our radar. He was on, he has a Texas offer. He has a lot of offers, but decided today's the day to pop. And we see this sometimes with kids, signing day for the current class, the kids for next year decide they take the opportunity, all the attention's on recruiting, to go ahead and announce, and that's what he did. But, when we get off here, I'm going to hopefully give him a call and, get his thoughts on committing to Texas and everything that went into it. But really like his tape. I just posted his huddle on our site, and seems like there's a lot to be excited about with him.
Well, I know you're going 100 miles an hour. How would you size up Texas's defensive line recruiting? I know I always ask you this, but to me, that's like, you got to have that covered, or else you can slip as a program. Yeah. Look at Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy.
Yeah. I think they're doing a great job. We're going to see how they finish out this cycle. There's guys, that they've, been involved with in the portal. They reached out to Walter Nolan. You're not, that's probably not going to happen, as we've learned. Jamari Caldwell, the Houston defensive line transfer, is a guy that's been in the mix. But in terms of the prep ranks, 3 commitments on board in terms of that interior defensive line, with Alex January, Melvin Hills, and DeAndre Robinson. I think 3 really, high ceiling type prospects. One interesting name that was on campus this past weekend that we've talked about off and on is Alex Foster, who's committed to Baylor, a kid from Mississippi. That is a 3-star defensive lineman. We interviewed him coming off his trip to Austin, and committed to Baylor. He was saying, Texas's chances right now are really high. I should do the proper quote. But so it sounds like, everything went well there. He said he had a really good time in Austin. He is not planning on signing a letter of intent on Wednesday, or, during this 3-day period starting tomorrow. He wants to take it to February. So, we'll see. Texas is going to continue recruiting him whether he goes tomorrow or, in February. So, that's a guy we're watching on the defensive line. Dalen Evans, a Texas A&M commit that Texas really wasn't pursuing very hard early on. He's a guy that they're in contact with, and he wants to take an official visit to Austin in January. We'll be keeping an eye on if he signs a letter of intent tomorrow. And then obviously the big fish is Dominic McKinley, the 24/7 Sports 5-star defensive lineman from Lafayette, Louisiana. Steve Wilfong had a really interesting little note last night on our message board over at Horns247 saying because the expectation was he was going to wait until February to sign his letter of intent, but now he might be looking at signing on Wednesday, and if he does, it's likely not with Texas A&M. So that leaves the 2 schools that are have been heavily in the mix for him throughout, and that's Texas and that's LSU. So that'll be a little storyline we're watching tomorrow. I reached out to some sources. They believe he's still waiting on signing, so we're going to keep an eye on that. But, if Steve Wilfong reports something, you got to keep a close eye on that, because he does not miss often, if at all.
Yeah. Hank, Xavier Filsamy flips from Florida, along with Wardell Mack, who earlier flipped from Florida, both going to Texas now to deepen that secondary. How big of a get is this? We know the McKinney product. He definitely praised Texas, talking about him and his connection with Blake Gideon and just, their chemistry. That's obviously huge. But just to get that flip, Steve Sarkisian and his coaching staff, obviously they were locked in. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's huge, and I don't think enough is enough attention is upon the fact that they didn't even offer him until October. That this is kind of like a late surge Texas made here and really made up a lot of ground. He was very happy with Florida. Obviously, we've seen the Gators recruiting efforts. I feel bad laughing. I mean, they're just tanking recruiting wise. They still have some top guys. Obviously, DJ Lagway and LJ McCray, who might end up flipping also. But they're kind of just trying to stay above water at this point. And Xavier Folsamy, that was a guy again. They did. They pushed late for. They offered him right before the Red River Shootout, got him on campus. Excuse me. For an unofficial visit, and then this past weekend for an official visit, which essentially sealed the deal. But he had that quote to Mike Roach in his commitment story, just saying, kids in Texas want to play at Texas right now, and that's a good indicator of the health of your program. With the home state kids want to stay home and play for the home state school. So massive get, a kid that could probably have kind of a Derek Williams-esque impact in terms of freshman that could play in the secondary next year. Obviously all around, just really talented football player. He's a converted wide receiver to safety. So, he's got those ball skills. He's really instinctual, high IQ. So really big time get. And like you said, flip two of Florida's top defensive back commits. They're doing a lot of good work between, Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon.
Yeah, Hank, I'm looking at the team rankings. A&M down at 21. How high were they? Do you remember?
Ooh, I'd have to go back and add the stuff back to the calculator. I think they were like 9 or 10 because when Texas broke into the top 10 or 11, I think they were just behind A&M or just above or just ahead of them. So they've taken some hits the last few weeks, and they still. We'll probably talk about them, but Ty Anthony Smith is still out there as well.
Well, let's talk about Ty Anthony Smith, the linebacker. Texas going to be losing, Jalen Ford. And what's that situation looking like?
Yeah. So there was a lot of, confusion, misdirection. Maybe it was last week with his plans. There was the thought that he was going to officially visit Austin this past weekend. And from what we've been told, he did. He did make it in, he was saying at one point in the week, he wasn't going to visit Texas. He's locked into Texas A&M. Then he tweeted like a GIF of the Colorado state or the state of Colorado flag. So people thought he might be going to Boulder for a visit. So, you're trying to decipher all the social media misdirection.
And the emoji game.
Yeah. We were told he did end up at Austin. So we've actually changed, and as we reported on Horns 24/7, if he does make that visit to Austin and takes a look at Texas on that official trip, we think he's going to end up in Austin at Texas. So he's still committed to Texas A&M. We've been checking around. I don't think anything's going to happen today. I think he intends to sign tomorrow. He's an early enrollee, so he's got to get this thing over with one way or the other. But I do think tomorrow he signs with Texas, and we'll figure out what time and everything. But I think things are still trending in the right direction, and that's without Jeff Choate, who was kind of leading the charge on recruiting him. Texas has stayed in this thing even in the midst of a linebacker coach opening. So that just goes to show the top to bottom ability of this staff to pick each other up when one's pick things up where left off, that kind of thing. So I think
is this a Jeff Banks rescue job?
Could be, yeah. I think obviously a lot of ties in that area, and I think he's certainly playing a role. Pete K, obviously. Sark Sark's on a mission on this recruiting. I think, what did he tweet yesterday? We're on a heater after the 3 commitments. So certainly a lot of effort going in from the whole staff.
Yeah. Hank, Emory Winston, he committed yesterday, the tight end out of the Georgia area. It was between Texas, Ohio State, and UCF. And I saw a quote that he said he always dreamed about being in the SEC as a little kid. How big of a get is this? And who does he remind you of as a tight end? Does he remind you of JT Sanders? Anybody like that?
Yeah, so you look at him, he's not a huge kid. He's hair under 6'2". I think obviously the first thing you think of is, he's that Y, he's that kind of that inline blocker type guy. But obviously can do a lot. His film, I mean, you watch his film and he's a basketball player as well. So, he can go up in those contested situations and, high point the ball, win those one-on-one matchups. So he's a receiving threat as well, but he really, searches for contact as a blocker as well. He's a very willing blocker, and I think any head coach loves that in a tight end to have that as an asset that they can use in different packages. So I think he gives them a little bit of both. I think we'll still see Texas go out and try to probably find more of that bigger bodied wide receiver type tight end. More and talking to Emory Winston, he says he feels like his game is comparable to JT Sanders. That was one of the big sells he had with Texas, because his quote was even saying, like, and I thought this was interesting because you talk to kids and you're like, oh, I want to top 10 pick, that's what I'm going to be. But he's talking about JT Sanders and he's like, I see what JT Sanders is doing. He's going to go probably be a second or third round pick this year, and that could be me. Like, you don't hear a kid saying, I could be a second or third round pick in a few years in terms of like that being the selling point. But that's what he likes. And he's been talking to Jatavian Sanders a bunch too, and I think he helped a lot in this recruiting process in the last few months with really pushing Texas over the edge. So, I think he's an exciting prospect. 24/7 Sports is actually higher on him than anybody. I think we have him as the number 8 tight end and like 112 or something in that range overall in the country. So definitely a guy that our guys are very high on. And I think it says a lot to the fact that, Texas is taking him. They go out to Georgia to get a tight end this early in the 2025 cycle. I think that goes to show how highly they think of Emory Winston as well.
Yeah. Hank, I know you got to run. You're doing a million things, but anything else just for fans heading into signing day?
Yeah, I think the big things we're watching, there's not like a ton of Texas drama. But I say that and like knock on wood, it's gonna be like craziest day ever. But no, I think Dominic McKinley is a situation to certainly watch. We just mentioned him a minute ago. Does he sign tomorrow? Does he take it to February? One guy we're watching that's on Texas's commitment list is Aaron Hampton, who Bama's making a very big push for to try to flip him. And obviously, if you followed this class long enough, you know that Hampton has decommitted in the past. He's been committed to Texas twice. He's been committed to Baylor at one point. So, flipping, changing commitments, decommitting isn't something foreign to him, so I think keep that in mind. I talked to one source who, they're like, we're not going to be surprised if that ends up happening. But I talked to another source that would be surprised if that happened. So, I lean towards, in that kind of scenario, I lean towards him sticking. I think he obviously committed to Texas for a reason. He is very close with Gideon, Jeff Banks. I think he likes the plan they have for him. But then the same point, if he does project as a defensive back, is he seeing Kobe Black, Xavier Filsaime, Wardell Mack come in and, maybe give him some second thoughts about, where's his place in this class. And I will say Texas wants him in this class. It's not like he's getting pushed out or anything. So I'm not trying to say it like that, but from a recruit's point of view. So Aaron Hampton's another one to watch. We're going to keep an eye on Anthony Smith tomorrow. Does he flip? And then, any other guys that decide to maybe sign that maybe we're planning on waiting until February, like Alex Foster. Does he plan to sign? Dalen Evans, the Texas A&M commit, Dominic McKinley. So those will be some as well. So should be a fun day. We'll have you guys covered at Horns 24/7 top to bottom.
That's right, baby. Well, listen, man, we appreciate you taking some time. We know you're going 100 miles an hour.
Sure.
Thanks so much, dude.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.